Tell him watch his back.
Come on out, Will.
Go ahead, I got you, Will, I got you.
Pull the chain, Will. Pull the chain. Come on, get up there.
Officer Shannon Foster thought he was responding to a simple medical emergency. A woman had collapsed in her garage. At least that's what the call made it sound like.
Hey, man, come on out here. I ain't going nowhere. Where's our officer at? You got a hostage? Yeah. What do you got a hostage for? What's going on? Don't let me that way, man. Don't let us out.
Within minutes of stepping onto the scene, he found himself running for his life, dodging bullets in what would turn into one of the most chilling police standoffs in Georgia's history.
She's up top. You up top. You up top. Yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
It started on a quiet Thursday morning in April 2019. A woman named Anitria had grown increasingly anxious. Her sister, Sandra, hadn't responded to texts or calls in hours. Neither had her teenage nephew, Aravan, or Sandra's boyfriend, Anthony. Worried, Anitria drove to their home in Stockbridge, Georgia. What she found there was nothing short of a nightmare. The first thing she noticed was the blood, dark and spreading, near the garage. Peering through the glass, she saw Sandra lying on the ground, motionless and covered in blood. Her heart dropped. She could barely form the words when she dialed 911.
Henry County 911, okay. Can you please call? Please. Sandy. He's in the garage. Is he breathing, please? He's in the garage? I can see him, ma'am. His blood all over the driveway.
The dispatcher stayed on the line as Anitria tried to explain what she was seeing. Fear gripped her voice. She was terrified for her sister, but also for the two others who were unaccounted for.
You're having a baby shower on Saturday? So she's pregnant? Yeah, she's due on April 23rd. 19 days. Okay.
Adding to the tension, she revealed she was pregnant and standing just feet from what could be an active crime scene. Officer Foster was the first to arrive. The house looked peaceful from the outside, a well-kept suburban home like any other. But the sense of calm was deceiving. Anitria rushed to meet him, pointing toward the garage with panic in her voice. Foster cautiously approached. Between two parked cars in the driveway, he saw more blood. When he reached the garage windows, he finally spotted Sandra, still unmoving, still covered in blood.
In the first set of windows, I don't see anything. So I go to the second side of the garage. I look down, and that's a woman's body. No movement, no anything. She's hurt. She needs medical attention.
It was impossible to know if she was alive. Foster hoped for the best. Maybe she had collapsed. Maybe she'd gone into labor in the car and crawled to the garage. Whatever the explanation, he needed to get inside fast.
Hey, you got some gloves?
Yeah,
I got the full station. She's on that side.
he's in the garage.
Yeah. Laying down right there.
Step to your left, we can't go in the garage, we can go in the front door, it's locked.
Just as he was trying to find a way in, Officer Taylor Webb pulled up. The two officers tried the garage door, but it wouldn't budge. They moved to the front, knocking and calling out. No response.
I just knocked. Here we got the police!
Can you see her?
Yeah.
Is she responding?
No.
Dude, give me 2 radio. Blood in the driveway, females visible inside, unresponsive. We're about to 4th century. You ready, Foster?
The silence was heavy, but they couldn't wait. Someone might still be alive in there. Together, they forced the door open and walked straight into a trap. Almost instantly, bullets flew. Officer Foster dove backward, instinctively retreating toward a window. One of the shots missed him by inches. As he looked up, he caught a glimpse of the shooter. Their eyes met for a heartbeat before the gunman pulled the trigger again.
He's on the No, don't go around. He's on the
Foster barely escaped, but his fear wasn't for himself. It was for his partner. Officer Webb had gone in first, but now he was nowhere to be seen. He hadn't come back out. There were no sounds, no signs. Foster couldn't tell if Webb was injured, unconscious, or worse. The chaos escalated quickly. A third officer, Keegan Merritt, arrived just as more gunfire rang out. He stepped out of his patrol car, weapon drawn, unsure of what he was walking into. Inside the house was a killer. Outside was confusion and fear.
I draw my weapon, and I'm kind of evaluating what is this. Oh, watch out!
Anitria was still at the scene when the gunshots broke out again. She screamed and sprinted across the street, ducking behind a neighbor's truck. Moments earlier, she'd been worried about her sister. Now, she was terrified she might get shot herself. The officers were completely in the dark. They didn't know who was alive inside, how many people were injured, or what they were truly dealing with. Every window felt like a threat. Every movement could be the last. They had walked into something far worse than they ever imagined. A real-life house of horrors. Inside, a killer had taken a hostage and was prepared to take more lives. The situation wasn't just dangerous. It was spiraling into something deadly.
Hey, somebody inside the house. He's inside the house right now on the stairs. On the stairs? Stairs right there.
What began as a routine welfare check had turned into a nightmare. Officers who arrived expecting a potential medical emergency were now ducking for their lives, pinned down by gunfire. The bullets had stopped for now, but the silence was just as terrifying. The air was thick with uncertainty, and things were only getting worse.
I'm getting my AR. Where's Webb? Tell him back up and get some cover. Webb, you okay?
What police first suspected to be a botched burglary had escalated into a full-blown hostage crisis, and with each minute that passed, the situation grew more unpredictable. Officers Joseph Maddox, Mark Ehrman, and Justin Boggs arrived next, hoping to bring order. Instead, they were greeted with chaos.
Come here, I got a lot of shots. I got 30 round clips in here.
Hey man, come on out here.
I ain't coming nowhere.
Where's our officer at?
Anybody got out of the Webb yet?
Where's our officer at?
He's downstairs somewhere.
Where's he at?
I don't know. I got it anymore.
Gunfire echoed through the neighborhood as they scrambled to find cover. The attacker had the tactical advantage, nestled deep within a familiar home, and he wasn't afraid to shoot. Inside, Officer Taylor Webb was still unaccounted for. His fellow officers were desperate to reach him, but couldn't risk a reckless move. Every decision had to be calculated. Rushing the house would put more lives in danger, and they knew it. So they waited, listened, and searched for any sign that their colleague was still alive. Officer Keegan Merritt knew they were running out of options. He sprinted to his patrol vehicle and retrieved an AR-15 rifle, a weapon that could give them a fighting chance against an unseen and unpredictable shooter. Holding it tight, he found what little cover he could behind a thin tree, fully exposed but determined. If the gunman showed himself again, Merritt would be ready. Then, the gunman's voice shattered the silence. From the shadows, he began talking. At first, it seemed like the ranting of someone trying to gain control. But then he made a chilling claim. He had a hostage. This wasn't just an active shooter anymore. This was now a delicate negotiation with someone who claimed to hold power over another life.
Hey man, come on out here.
I ain't coming nowhere. You're not coming here. I got a hostage.
You got a hostage?
Yeah.
What do you got a hostage for? What's going on?
The officers' minds raced. Who was he talking about? Sandra, the woman found bloodied in the garage, was unresponsive. Officer Webb was somewhere inside, but likely in a different part of the house. And still missing were 16-year-old Aaron and Anthony Bailey Jr., Sandra's live-in boyfriend. No one could tell if the hostage threat was real or just a scare tactic, but with so many people unaccounted for, they had to treat it as deadly serious. Meanwhile, across the street, Sandra's sister Anitria was watching everything unfold. Just hours earlier, she'd walked into this nightmare hoping to check on her family. Now she was hiding behind a neighbor's truck, shaking, unable to comprehend how things had spiraled so far out of control. The blood in the driveway, the silence from her sister's house, and the sudden gunfire, none of it made sense. But then, her phone buzzed. For a brief moment, there was hope. It was a message from Anthony. That feeling disappeared instantly when she read it. The words were clear, terrifying, and surreal.
He texted me and he was like, tell them don't come in, I have Kiwi. They asked me to write a statement. I couldn't even write because I was crying so hard.
He wasn't a victim. He was the one behind it all. The man her family had trusted, who had lived in the house with them, who'd never shown any sign of violence, was now the threat they were all trying to survive. This was no random attack. It wasn't a home invasion gone wrong. This was calculated, personal. The message from Anthony erased any doubt. He knew the house, knew where people might hide, and now officers realized they were up against someone who was both emotionally and strategically embedded in the situation.
Till that moment, to be honest with you, I can't say anything bad about Mr. Bailey at all. It's hard to imagine that he would do something like that.
Back on scene, officers relayed the stunning revelation. The shooter wasn't a stranger. He was family, and he had no intention of surrendering. He was texting threats to kill anyone who tried to enter the home.
We're getting information. There's current texting going on. Suspect is holding a gun to the hostage's head. And if anybody tries to approach, he's going to kill them.
The atmosphere, already tense, became even more volatile. They knew now that this wasn't just about rescue, it was about survival. As they strategized their next move, Officer Foster remained pinned down near the garage, listening carefully for any sign of life. The stillness was broken by faint sounds from inside. Movement, footsteps. Maybe someone was alive. But who? Was it Anthony preparing to strike again? Or was it someone else, desperately trying to escape?
Somebody's in the garage.
That's William. Get him out.
Get him out.
Bust the window!
Bust the window. Stop.
Use your baton!
Where?
The garage, once a place for quiet routine, had become the epicenter of a growing horror. The same house that had held a family just hours before was now a trap, a battleground with too many unknowns.
Hey, you alright,
Webb, you okay?
Tell him watch his back.
Come on out, Webb.
Police worked to piece together a plan. They couldn't go in blind, they couldn't risk more officers, but they couldn't abandon the people trapped inside either. Every decision now had life or death consequences. Outside, Anitria sat frozen in fear.
Day to absolute chaos in about 2.5 seconds. It's not like what Hollywood says. Time doesn't slow down, your brain speeds up. After I kicked in the front door, I took a step forward and looked left, didn't see anything pressing. And as I took the second step, the bad guy came down the stairs and opened fire.
The text from Anthony kept replaying in her mind. She couldn't understand how the man she once trusted could turn so violent. There had been no warning signs, no arguments, nothing that hinted at this outcome. It didn't seem real. The officers urged her to keep trying to reach him. Maybe her voice could make him pause. Maybe he'd listen. But there was no answer. The silence on the other end only made it worse. What had started as a check-in on a quiet Georgia morning had turned into something that would haunt everyone involved. A desperate fight to save lives, uncover the truth, and stop a man who had already crossed the line. And it wasn't over yet. The house was silent, except for the tension crackling in the air. Officer Foster stayed crouched low, barely breathing, his eyes fixed on any movement from inside. He didn't know what Anthony would do next, but he was prepared for the worst.
The hardest part for me was hearing them call for me, asking if I was okay, and not being able to tell them that I was. I knew that not responding was just ripping their guts out. Had I returned communications either by shouting or radio, he would know exactly where I was, and he could start shooting me through the walls of the house. I didn't have any.
Then suddenly, something shifted. A noise from the garage caught the officer's attention. Someone was inside.
I could see the victim lying on the ground behind a car that was parked in the garage. I got a little closer to her, and I could clearly see that she was deceased, and she had been that way for several hours.
Without wasting time, they rushed to the garage window. They couldn't see much, but they could hear movement. One officer used his baton to smash the glass, desperate to get a view. That's when they saw him, Officer Webb. He was alive, but barely able to move.
My motor functions were going down. Even my cognitive ability, my ability to think clearly, I could tell my mind was starting to get more muddled. I was having a hard time forming coherent thought.
From the outside, the situation had already seemed like a nightmare. But for Officer Webb, trapped inside, it had been far worse. What started as a routine call had spiraled into chaos in mere seconds.
There's no way he's climbing out of those windows. And so I just look at my coworkers, my brothers, and I'm like, hey guys, y'all got me. I put all my might into getting Webb out of that garage. I don't know where it came from. All I knew is that somebody had to do something.
Webb had kicked in the front door, scanned the room, and taken one step inside when everything went wrong. From the top of the stairs, Anthony had appeared and opened fire. 2 shots hit Webb, one in the chest, one in the hip. He hit the floor hard. Exposed and bleeding, he knew he couldn't stay in the doorway. It would make him an easy target.
Come on, get up, get up. Where? You? There, get out.
Somehow, through the pain, he pulled himself out of the line of sight and found cover, but he couldn't call out for help. He knew Anthony would hear him and zero in on his location.
Hit the chest and the hip. And his chest and his head. That's on his radio too. We'll talk to you about it. Keep breathing.
So he stayed silent, even as his fellow officers frantically called his name. Time moved differently inside the house. Every second was a battle, between staying conscious and giving in to the pain. Webb knew that if he didn't act soon, he wouldn't make it. He didn't know who was still alive, but he knew he had to move. Staying low, he dragged himself across the floor, inch by inch, toward the garage. That's when he saw her. Sandra. Her body was lying behind a car, cold and still. Webb didn't need to check for a pulse. It was already too late. The horror of that realization only fueled his urgency. He had to get out, not just for himself, but to make sure no one else died today. But his body was failing. The bullet in his hip had done more damage than he'd realized. His strength was fading, his vision narrowed. He started to lose control of his hands, his thoughts becoming foggy. He was slipping. Desperate, he started banging on the garage door, hoping someone outside would hear him. That sound was all it took.
All right, let me get in here and work, guys. Let me get in here and work. Come on. Y'all got it. Hey, Boggs and Joey, as soon as he drop him, come back up here. We're going to need all the 99 guys up here. Got him? Yeah, we're good.
Officers rushed toward the noise. Seeing Webb alive gave them a jolt of hope. But there was a problem. The window into the garage was too small. Webb was too injured to climb out. Time was running out. They had to act fast. Without hesitation, Officer Maddox took over. No tools, no weapons, just brute force. He kicked at the wooden panel with everything he had. Blow after blow, the wood finally gave way. It was barely enough space, but it would have to do. Webb used the last of his energy to squeeze through the gap and collapsed on the ground outside. The moment he hit the pavement, the officers rushed to him. The vest had stopped the chest shot, but the one to his hip was serious. There was no visible bleeding, but that made it even more dangerous. The bullet was still inside, and they didn't know what kind of damage it had done. Thankfully, paramedics arrived quickly and took over, stabilizing Webb and getting him to safety. Even as they moved Webb to the ambulance, the job wasn't finished. Sandra was already gone, that much they knew, but Arion was still unaccounted for, somewhere inside that house, potentially in Anthony's reach. The entire team's focus now shifted. The urgency to find Arian and stop Anthony was heavier than ever. Every officer knew the stakes. Officer Merritt, still in position behind the small tree that offered little protection, knew they had to make another move.
Hey, man!
Yeah.
What's going on? What's the problem?
I got a line of sight.
What?
Don't try to figure out where, man. I got a line of sight.
Well, what's the problem?
It wasn't just about ending a standoff anymore. It was about saving a life. Anthony's unpredictability had made every second a gamble. He knew the house. He'd lived in it. He knew the angles, the entry points, and how to use them to his advantage. Worse, if he was willing to shoot a family member and a police officer, there was no telling what else he was capable of.
Man, what's the problem? Ah! Your pop!
Shots fired, yeah, right here, shots fired.
I'm sure your shot fired.
Mary, you good? Mary, yeah, I'm here.
But now, the officers had a slight advantage. Webb was safe. Sandra had been found. And the gunman, likely still inside, was starting to lose control over the situation. Every piece of new information gave the officers just a little more ground to stand on. Now they just needed to end this before another shot was fired. It started like any tense call, with officers responding to a home where something just didn't feel right. As they approached, they hoped to talk things down, to figure out what was really going on inside that house. But what unfolded would become one of the most harrowing standoffs in Georgia's recent history.
Left side, there's a stairway. Left side, there's a stairway. Damn, shoot him. A pistol, or maybe an AR. City at 30 rounds.
Close to the door, officers suspected there might be a clue, something that could help them understand what Anthony Bailey was planning. But when they tried to speak with him, things quickly took a dark turn. After issuing a vague warning, Anthony fell silent. There was no negotiation, no explanation, just tension. Officers Ramlin and Maddox made the bold decision to circle around the house, cutting through the front yard to get to the back. It was risky. They were completely exposed, out in the open with no cover. But their mission was clear. They needed to make sure Anthony didn't slip out through another exit. They had no idea the danger waiting for them. Suddenly, chaos erupted. Gunfire rang out. Officer Merritt was struck. His right hand hit so badly that one of his fingers hung by a thread. But in that moment, survival took over.
Hey, man, what's the problem? Ah! Your pop!
Shots fired, yeah, right here, shots fired.
I'm sure your shot fired.
Mary, you good? Mary, yeah, I'm here.
He hit the ground and began crawling, trying to escape the yard. Anthony had the advantage, firing from a hidden position while the officers were completely exposed. Somehow, Merritt managed to reach the other officers waiting near the back. Despite his injury, Merritt tried to stay focused, alerting others about a nearby stairway and warning them that the shooter might be heavily armed. A paramedic rushed him to an ambulance where he received urgent medical care. But even as he was treated, the situation was spiraling further out of control.
That was when it first going on.
Okay, you good?
Yeah.
With 2 officers already down, rescuing young Aravan, believed to be inside the house, seemed almost impossible. Authorities immediately escalated their response. They locked down the neighborhood, called in reinforcements, and brought in SWAT teams from nearby counties. Armored vehicles rolled into the area. The scene transformed into a full-scale emergency.
Responding SO units that are assisting if they can shut down the neighborhood and as a secondary perimeter.
Back at the house, Officer Foster remained pinned near the garage. Above him, an open window loomed, an ideal spot for a shooter. Foster didn't move. He couldn't. Every second felt like a lifetime as he waited for backup, fearing the next shot could be aimed at him. 2 long hours passed before the SWAT team reached him and pulled him to safety.
Last I get from Navy clear to shut down the subdivision.
Radio info, we need contact, we need my reference, all of our personnel here. Lake County SWAT is 10-7. They are getting their armored vehicle here now. Calling on the flags, we have a negotiator and a drone in on.
Night fell, and the standoff dragged on. Officers attempted to negotiate, trying again and again to make contact, but Anthony wouldn't respond. He gave no indication whether Aravan was still alive. Eventually, he stopped communicating altogether.
Couldn't say how many times he fired, but he fired multiple rounds, ricocheting off. Couldn't tell where it was coming from. We couldn't see the suspect to get a shot off at him.
With time running out, the SWAT team changed tactics. Tear gas was launched through windows to flush Anthony out. Instead, they were met with more gunfire. Rounds ricocheted through the structure, and the officers still couldn't get a visual on him. The shooter remained hidden, dangerous and determined. After more than 16 hours of failed attempts and unrelenting danger, the decision was made. They would enter the home. The SWAT team moved in carefully, their every step fueled by hope, but also dread. That hope was shattered in the garage. There, they found Sandra, the woman at the center of it all, already gone, killed at close range. Moving through the house, they discovered the body of young Aravan in an upstairs bedroom. He too had been shot. The realization was crushing. Despite all their efforts, Aravan had been dead for hours. The officers had held on to hope, but it was too late. Finally, in another bedroom, they found Anthony Bailey. He had taken his own life with a gunshot. The man who had terrorized the neighborhood, injured officers, and ended 2 innocent lives had escaped justice in the worst way, by denying everyone the answer to why. Sandra's family was left devastated. They had known the relationship had its ups and downs, but nothing like this. There had been no signs of abuse, at least not outwardly. But a chilling Facebook post Sandra shared just hours before her death now seemed like a cry for freedom. She had written about outgrowing people without goals and not wasting life on unhappiness.
Just kept playing over and over in my head, like, why would somebody do this?
Investigators now believe she was preparing to leave Anthony for good. There was one more disturbing detail that emerged. Anthony Bailey, a convicted felon with a past conviction for aggravated assault, should never have had a firearm. But because Georgia lacks effective systems to remove guns from convicted criminals, he still had one, and it cost lives. Officers Taylor Webb and Keegan Merritt were eventually stabilized and treated at Grady Memorial Hospital. Physically, they would heal, but the emotional toll from that day, the shots fired, the screams, the lives lost, would linger far longer. It was a tragedy that no one saw coming and one that left a permanent scar on everyone involved. Is this conversation helpful so far?
This whole thing has quite drastically changed my life, without a doubt.
Still recovering. My hand is still messed up. I went through a lot of stuff after I was shot.
The pain left behind by the events of that day continues to ripple through everyone who knew Sandra. While Officer Merritt struggles with the long road to recovery, still dealing with the trauma and physical damage from the shooting, Sandra's family faces a grief that words can barely describe. Sandra had been counting down the days to welcome her son, Antonio. He was due on April 29th, a date filled with dreams of a new beginning. Instead, those dreams were cut short in the most heartbreaking way. Aaron, her teenage son, was full of ambition. A rising football talent, he had just returned from a college visit, excited about what the future might hold. But none of those hopes would ever come to life. The tragedy struck just before what was supposed to be a joyful weekend. Sandra's baby shower was scheduled for April 6th, 2019. Instead of celebrating a new life, her loved ones were forced to plan her funeral. A day meant for laughter turned into a moment of unimaginable sorrow.
She's always just the type of person where she's fun to be around.
And I still hear a voice in my head. And what has happened to my family, I wouldn't wish it upon anybody.
Sandra wasn't just a mother. She was the heartbeat of her family, someone who lit up any room she entered. The echo of her presence, her voice, and her warmth still lingers in the hearts of those who loved her. Sadly, Sandra's story is not unique. In the United States, homicide remains the leading cause of death for pregnant women, a haunting and deeply troubling reality. Her death, along with those of her sons, should serve as a call to action.